This war would be decided at sea. In the middle of the 17th century, two Protestant naval powers, England and the Dutch Republic, found their commercial rivalry escalating into open conflict. The theater of this war would be the churning waters of the North Sea and the English Channel. Here, massive fleets of wooden warships, armed with hundreds of cannons, would clash in a struggle for maritime supremacy. This wasn't about isolated skirmishes. This was total war at sea, a brutal contest of attrition where victory would be measured in wreckage and survival. The year is 1652, fleets are assembling. In England, the Commonwealth's Parliament, emboldened by its victory in the Civil War, seeks to enforce its Navigation Acts, challenging Dutch dominance over global trade. In the Dutch Republic, the proud merchant nation mobilizes its vast naval resources, determined to protect the lifelines of its empire. Tensions, simmering for years, finally boil over. The first shots are fired, and the North Sea erupts. The Battle of the Kentish Knock in October 1652 was an early, brutal lesson. The English fleet, under Robert Blake, engaged the Dutch led by Witte de With. The fighting was ferocious. Ships maneuvered in chaotic melees, blasting each other at close range. English broadsides proved devastatingly effective, tearing through Dutch hulls and rigging. While the battle was technically an English victory, it was a costly one, and it bred a dangerous overconfidence in London. They believed the Dutch were broken. They were wrong. Just 2 months later, at the Battle of Dungeness, the Dutch returned with a vengeance. Now, under the command of the legendary Martin Tromp, they escorted a massive convoy through the English Channel. Blake, with a smaller fleet, was forced to engage. The winter sea was unforgiving, and the battle was a chaotic, swirling brawl. This time, the Dutch had the upper hand. English ships were battered, captured, and forced to retreat. It was a humiliating defeat for England. Legend says Tromp sailed up the channel with a broom tied to his mast, a symbolic gesture of sweeping the seas clean of his enemies. The war was far from over. The conflict had now reached a terrifying scale. Fleets of over 100 ships on each side were becoming the norm. The year 1653 would see the most destructive battles of the entire war. In February, the 3-day slugfest known as the Battle of Portland began. Blake and Tromp met again, each commanding enormous fleets. For 3 days, the sea was a vision of hell. Cannon fire was relentless. Ships became floating slaughterhouses, their decks slick with blood. Masts splintered and crashed down, sails caught fire, and the screams of the wounded were lost in the roar of the guns. The English, with their heavier ships and more powerful cannons, slowly gained the advantage. They broke the Dutch line, inflicting terrible damage. Yet the Dutch fought with desperate courage, protecting their precious merchant convoy. When the smoke finally cleared after 3 days of ceaseless combat, the scale of the losses was staggering. Dozens of ships were lost on both sides, with thousands of sailors killed or wounded. The Dutch managed to save most of their convoy, but their navy was severely mauled. Every battle brought both sides closer to collapse. The war had become a meat grinder. Victory wasn't about a single, glorious moment, but about who could endure the most punishment. In June 1653, the fleets clashed again at the Battle of the Gabid. This time, the English had a decisive technological and tactical edge. Their line of battle tactics proved superior to the Dutch melee approach. The English ships formed a disciplined wall of cannon fire, systematically dismantling the Dutch fleet. A critical moment came when Dutch Admiral Tromp's flagship was temporarily disabled, causing confusion in his fleet. The Dutch were forced into a disastrous retreat, losing numerous ships without inflicting comparable losses on the English. For the first time, England had established a clear naval superiority. They blockaded the Dutch coast, strangling their trade and crippling their economy. The Dutch Republic was on the brink of ruin. With their harbors blocked and their economy grinding to a halt, they had to make one final, desperate gamble. In August 1653, Admiral Tromp sailed out to break the English blockade, leading to the final major engagement of the war, the Battle of Scheveningen. It was the largest and bloodiest naval battle of its time. Over 200 warships turned the sea into a floating battlefield of fire and smoke. Early in the fight, disaster struck the Dutch. A musket ball fired from an English ship found its mark, killing Admiral Tromp. The loss of their inspirational commander was a devastating blow. Command broke down, and panic began to spread through the Dutch fleet. Though they fought on with grim determination, the battle was lost. The Dutch fleet was shattered, retreating in disarray, having suffered immense losses. But they had paid a price in blood to achieve their objective. The English blockade was broken. The English fleet, itself horribly damaged and running low on supplies, was forced to return to port. The Battle of Scheveningen was a tactical victory for England, but a strategic stalemate. The sheer destruction had exhausted both nations. The Dutch had lost their greatest admiral and a huge portion of their fleet. The English, despite their victories, had suffered crippling losses in men and ships that they could barely afford to replace. The war hadn't been won by a brilliant maneuver or a single heroic charge. It had been decided by attrition. The sea had simply consumed fleets faster than they could be rebuilt. Peace negotiations followed, culminating in the Treaty of Westminster in 1654. England had secured its key demands, but the cost was immense. The North Sea fell silent. Across the empty water, the ghosts of shattered fleets drifted. Wreckage washed ashore for weeks, a grim reminder of the price of supremacy. The war had demonstrated a new, terrible reality of naval warfare, a contest not just of courage, but of endurance. Victory came not through glory, but through survival. The sea chose its victor through destruction. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, be sure to like and subscribe for more.